Hello and welcome to Psych Boost. In this video I'll be talking about the cognitive approach to treating depression. I'll be discussing Beck Cbt and Ellis's rational emotive behaviour therapy. Some of the key terms I'll be using in this video are thought catching, reality testing and disputation. I'll be discussing some evaluative research and giving you ways you can extend your evaluations. Let's begin on the cognitive approach to treating depression. So first of all, I'll give you a definition of what cognitive behavioural therapy actually is. It's a talking therapy, and its focus is identifying and challenging irrational thoughts. Activities are also set in order to change behaviours. Beck Cbt is a 16 to 20 week program. Its focus isn't on long past events or potential future events. Beck Cbt is very much focused on your present experience and issues that you might have had maybe just that week. So one idea we need to know of is the idea of thought catching. The therapist, as part of the CBT program, will teach their clients to identify automatic negative thoughts. If these can be identified and if they can be recorded, they can be challenged. They can be remade, reconstituted, reconstructed in a way that avoids distortion due to the negative triad we talked about in the previous video. Once these irrational thoughts have been identified, the client can then reality test. They'll go and act as a scientist into the real world and they'll do experiments. If an irrational thought is, if I go to that party no one will talk to me, their homework might be to go to the party and find out if people do talk to them. Once they've gone into the real world and collected the evidence, with the therapist they can sit down and they can evaluate it. Perhaps they went to the party and lots of people spoke to them. As part of this process, the diaries of the client might be used as evidence in order to test out the truth of these irrational thoughts. Another term, behavioural activation. What's quite typical of someone with depression is they'll avoid activities they used to enjoy. So as part of the process of CBT, homework is to re-engage with these enjoyable activities. That should improve the emotion and to challenge any negative thoughts that they can't do these activities anymore. Another version of CBT, Ellis's CBT, or rational emotive behaviour therapy, is a development of the ABC model I talked about in the previous video. So developing ABC to ABCDE, disputation of irrational beliefs. Hopefully, if we can dispute these irrational beliefs and show them not to be real, and show them to be irrational, we might then lead on to E. We might have an effective change in the behaviour and the emotion of the individual. So this rational emotive behaviour therapy is really characterised by an intensive disputation, so effectively an arguing against the irrational beliefs. Now the therapist can make either logical disputations, so do these beliefs actually make sense? Or they can make empirical disputations. They can ask, is there really any evidence for these beliefs? So this is the cognitive approach to treating depression. Let's move on to some evaluations. I mentioned this study in the previous video. So March in 2007 compared cognitive behavioural therapy with medication, and March also looked at CBT in combination with medication. This ran over 36 weeks with 327 participants. What was found is both CBT alone and medication alone had an effectiveness rate of 81%, so pretty strong for both cases. When it was combined, CBT and medication, that rose to 86% effectiveness. So this suggests a number of things, in particular that CBT is as effective as medication. We might argue though that CBT is not really appropriate for patients who are very severely depressed. People who are very severely depressed aren't going to be able, they're maybe not willing to engage with what is quite a difficult psychological therapy. For those patients, it might be more appropriate to take medication for a little while until they improve their mood enough so they can then engage with CBT. Another concern is 16 to 20 sessions is a considerable investment in time, both for the therapist and the client. Also 16 to 20 sessions of a trained therapist is going to have a considerable cost associated to it. So if mental health support has to come from a health service, which of course will have limited funds, CBT might be less useful to it than cheaper and more accessible antidepressant medication. But certainly one positive of CBT is as a treatment method, it's really seen as empowering the patient to really take control of their own mental state as an engaged and active force Compare this to antidepressant medication, where the patient is really quite passive in their own recovery and is just hoping that the drugs will work. It's often useful to think of how psychology impacts on the economy, and we can certainly argue that the success of CBT has had a positive effect on the economy as a whole. If you can put people in control of their mental health, it's going to result in fewer sick days, and when they are in work, they're going to be more productive in work. So we might argue that CBT as a treatment is positive for the economy. I really hope you found this video useful in studying psychology. 3 things help this channel grow along: likes, comments and subscriptions. Thank you so much if you've done any of those things for this video.